Ladies and gentlemen, welcome and thank you for joining today's live SBA web conference. Please note that all participant lines will be muted for the duration of this event. You are welcome to submit written questions during the presentation, and these will be addressed by Valerie Coleman during the Q&A session. To submit a written question, please use the chat panel on the lower right-hand side of your screen. Choose All Panelists from the Sent To drop-down menu. If you require technical assistance, send a private note to the event producer. I would now like to formally begin today's conference and introduce Chris Eischen. Chris, please go ahead.
Thank you, Carla. Hello, everyone, and welcome to SBA's first Wednesday webinar series. Did you know that in 1987, after being petitioned by the National Women's History Project, Congress designated the month of March as Women's History Month? Between 1988 and 1994, Congress passed additional resolutions requesting and authorizing the President to proclaim March of each year as Women's History Month. And since 1988, U.S. presidents have issued annual proclamations designing the month of March as Women's History Month. So in honor of March being Women's History Month, we would like to focus on SBA's Women-owned Small Business program today. We appreciate you taking the time to join us on the March edition of SBA's first Wednesday webinar series. If you are new to our event, this webinar series focuses on getting subject matter experts on specific small business programs, in this case, SBA's Women-owned Small Business program, and having them provide you with the valuable information you can use in the performance of your job as an SBA employee, a member of the Federal Acquisition Community, or a PTAC employee. We periodically get emails asking if small business concerns can be invited to participate on the first Wednesday program, and the answer is no. The training you are about to receive is focused on you and is not applicable to small business vendors. SBA hopes to directly train the small business concerns through other methods. Now for a little background on the first Wednesday program. The program was initially created for contracting staff, which is why the training was called 1102 First Wednesday. The 1102 Designated Government Series for contracting personnel was later dropped to be more inclusive of other GS series, as federal agencies increased their requirements for non-1102s to obtain DIWEA and BAC-C certifications. Additionally, other federal buying activities, SBA staff, PTAC, and SBDC personnel who, after hearing about the training, requested access and were added to the list of participants. So that is why SBA's First Wednesday program is aimed at federal employees and other resource partners like PTACs and SBDCs. So thank you to those of you who are repeat attendees, and welcome to those of you who are new to the program. So as Carla mentioned, this is slide 2. I am Chris Eischen, and I work as a Procurement Center Representative, or PCR, with the U.S. Small Business Administration in Kansas City. Additionally, Ms. Valerie Coleman, who is the Prime Contracts Program Manager for SBA's Office of Government Contracting, will be reading your questions submitted during the program for our speakers to address at the end of today's session. And slide 2 includes both of our information. Slide 3, please note that all lines are on mute. However, you may submit questions anytime during today's session by entering them into the chat box on the lower right-hand screen where these questions will be addressed at the end of our speaker's presentation. So as you may have noticed, this month we have transitioned to a new WebEx application and have been informed that unfortunately some users may experience issues such as a blocked website or other error messages while attempting to access the conference login. It is our understanding that it is your internal IT security settings that are restricting your access, and the AT&T help desk or the SBA POCs identified will be unable to resolve the issue for you. If you are affected by this issue, please make sure you are dialed in and follow along with the slides provided in the email that was sent out. We will ensure that page numbers are clearly stated so you can follow along. We are hopeful this issue will be resolved by our next session, and we apologize for any inconvenience. Now, if you are having any other technical problems, please call the AT&T support desk at 1-888-796-6118. If you didn't get it, that telephone number for the AT&T support desk was included on the initial email invite for today's program and on slide 3 of the PowerPoint presentation that accompanied the SBA email. Otherwise, just keep listening and follow along with the PowerPoint that accompanied the invitation for today, and we will continually announce the page numbers so you can follow along. For more information on SBA Small Business Program Training, you can also visit the SBA Learning Center at www.sba.gov. Now on slide 4, the Association of Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, or APTAC, hosts a website where they post the first Wednesday program. Since these sessions are being recorded, you can re-listen to this program as well as previous sessions by visiting their website, which is provided on slide 4. Also, Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, or PTACs, are a great resource partner. And partnering with your local PTAC for an industry day, sharing a sources sought and RFI notices, or referring small business concerns to a PTAC are just a few reasons why they are such a useful resource for our acquisition personnel. Please contact your local PTAC for additional information. Slide 5 is the calendar of training sessions. Slide 5 includes the current program schedule for our fiscal year 2018, and today's session on the Women-Owned Small Business Program is the 6th topic in this series. As you will see, we have added a couple new topics to our program list and improved on other issues that have been presented in the past. We hope you find these topics interesting and applicable to your job. Now on slide 6, I'm sure many of you will want to receive credit for today's training, so today's session is worth 1 CLP. On slide 7 is the certificate you will complete with your name. First, you will manually fill in your name and then print the certificate from the PowerPoint to request credit for today's session. The PowerPoint was part of today's SBA email, as I mentioned earlier, and you'll simply go to slide 7, fill in your name, and print that out. Please note that SBA does not track your CLPs or communicate with your training program regarding your CLP achievements. And several of you maybe just be listening or received an email from someone else, but please, if you want to receive emails directly from us notifying you of the upcoming First Wednesday webinar events, please email us at SBA Learning, which is SBALEARNING at sba.gov. In the subject line, please enter the words add to list, and we'll ensure that you're added to the distribution list so you too can obtain these. As I mentioned earlier, this is slide 7, and where it says insert your name here, you'll simply just delete that, put your name in there, print page 7 only when you print that out. Otherwise, you'll have a slide deck of 60-some slides. So you'll just want that one slide. You submit that, scan it, and then submit it to your training coordinator or whatever policy you have in place. And that's how you get your 1 CLP for today. Slide 8. The Women-Owned Small Business Program is receiving a lot of attention in the world of small business, and today's training has been assembled to address several aspects of this topic. Our speaker has graciously accepted our invitation, and she will be directing me to continue on to the next slide. As mentioned earlier, if you are unable to access the WebEx application, please follow along on the PowerPoint presentation that was included in the email regarding today's training. We will identify the page number so you can follow along. Also, please note that due to connectivity issues, some viewers may experience a delay as the slide changes on your screen. So now I am pleased to introduce today's speaker to you, Ms. Amy Kim, who is the WOSB Program Manager for SBA's Office of Government Contracting. Amy, we appreciate that you could meet with us today, and I'll turn the program over to you now.
Thank you, Chris. Slide number 9, please. And slide number 10. This is a list of topics I'm going to go over this afternoon. Slide 11. The Women-Owned Small Business Federal Contract Program, or the Women-Owned Small Business Program, allows contracting officers to set aside procurement for women-owned small businesses, including economically disadvantaged women-owned small businesses, provided that certain conditions are met. As of December 2015, contracting officers have the authority to make source awards to women-owned small businesses, including economically disadvantaged women-owned small business under specific circumstances. I am going to explain what those circumstances are in just a moment. SBA regulations provide the framework of the program, and SBA procedures are incorporated in FAR 19.15. Slide 12. When the webinar concludes, I want you to have the following 3 takeaways. Number 1, not all NAICS codes are eligible for use under the Women-owned Small Business Program. The list of eligible NAICS codes are available on the SBA website. Number 2, a business that desires to qualify for contract work under the Women-owned Small Business Program must provide their eligibility documents to the WSB program repository. Number 3, contracting officers that conduct procurement under the program must verify whether the offeror has provided all the required documents to the WSB program repository. Slide number 13. There are 2 points in this slide that you need to know about. Although the National Defense Authorization Act of 2015 ended the self-certification option, businesses are allowed to continue to self-certify until SBA implements the certification requirement. SBA updated the eligible NAICS codes under the program in October 2017 to reflect NAICS 2017. Slide number 14. Before I proceed, I would like to point out that throughout the webinar, I'll be using 2 acronyms, WSB and EDWSB. AWSB is short for a women-owned small business, and an EDWSB is for an economically disadvantaged women-owned small business. Some of you mistakenly believe that an EDWSB is a separate program. It is not. As this diagram represents, EDWSB is a subset of WSB. An EDWSB is a WSB that is both owned and controlled by women that claim economic disadvantage. As such, if a business meets the eligibility requirements as an EDWSB, it automatically qualifies as a WSB. EDWSB and WSB make up the WSB program. Slide 15. Here is the first of the 10 questions that I will ask you during this webinar. Question: may an EDWSB submit an offer on a procurement set aside for WSBs? The answer is yes. An EDWSB is a subset of a WSB. Therefore, if a business qualifies as an EDWSB, it automatically meets the requirements as a WSB. Consequently, an EDWSB may submit an offer for WSB set aside. Slide 16. So what are the considerations that you need to make at the pre-solicitation stage? Slide 17. If a procurement is valued at over $150,000, contracting officers must consider setting it aside under the socioeconomic programs for small business before they consider a small business set aside. These socioeconomic programs include HUBZone, 8A, WSB, or Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Small Business. I'm just going to call it SDVO throughout this webinar. In order to do so, however, the following conditions must be met. First, you need to determine whether the rule of 2 can be met. Second, you need to ensure that the award will be made at a fair and reasonable price. Additionally, if the requirement is a follow-on, and an 8A firm is performing on the existing requirement, you may not award the follow-on contract to a HubZone, WSB, or an SDVO. Under the parity ruling, the contracting officers are free to choose among the socioeconomic programs for small business. Let's assume that your market research indicates that the conditions for 8A, HubZone, WSB, or SDVO set-aside cannot be met, but you identified one contractor in the socioeconomic groups that can perform the requirement. If so, you must consider making an award to the contractor on a sole source basis. FAR does not say that you must make the award. FAR says you must consider making the award on a sole source basis. If neither option is available, you need to consider a small business set-aside and then full and open competition. Your decision should be based on market research, historical data, and your agency's progress toward meeting its small business goals. Slide 18. If you're considering utilizing the WSB program, please note that not all NAICS codes are eligible under the program. Furthermore, separate NAICS codes are authorized for WSB and ED-WSB procurements. They do not overlap. Currently, 364 NAICS codes are authorized for WSB procurements, and 80 NAICS codes are eligible for ED-WSB procurements. If you're interested in WSB and or ED-WSB set-aside, please go to the WSB program website to determine whether the NAICS code assigned to the solicitation is eligible for use under the program. If your market research shows only one WSB and multiple small businesses can perform the requirement, you must consider making an award to the WSB on a sole source basis before you consider setting it aside for small businesses. Slide 19. Earlier in my presentation, I mentioned that WSBs must provide their eligibility documents to the WSB program repository in order to qualify for contract awards under the WSB program. This specific requirement is a source of confusion among many businesses. In order to eliminate confusion and avoid a delay in the procurement process, I would like to recommend that you include the following language in your solicitation. You need to remind prospective offers of their responsibility for providing their eligibility documents to the WSB program repository. Moreover, you may want to make them aware of possible consequences of not complying with the regulatory requirement. You may encourage the businesses in need of assistance in complying with the requirement to contact SBA. Slide 20. So what are the considerations that must be met in order for contracting officers to set aside procurements for WSBs? First, as this decision chart represents, first specify the NAICS code for the solicitation, and then go to the SBA website to make sure that this particular NAICS code is eligible for use under the WSB program. Again, as I emphasized a few minutes ago, please note that separate NAICS codes are authorized for WSB procurement. And if the NAICS code assigned to the procurement is authorized for WSB, and then you need to refer to your market research to see if 2 or more WSB will submit an offer. You also need to ensure that the award will be made at a fair and reasonable price. If all the conditions are met, you may set it aside for WSB. Slide 21. On the other hand, if the NAICS code assigned to the procurement is designated for EDWSB only, you need to determine whether 2 or more EDWSBs will submit an offer. Lastly, the award must be made at a fair and reasonable price. If all of these conditions are met, you may set it aside for EDWSBs. Slide 22. Question. If the NAICS code assigned to the solicitation is authorized for WSB, can the contracting officer receive a response from an EDWSB? I'll give you 2 seconds to think about the answer. The answer is yes. I just rephrased the question that I asked you a few minutes ago. Remember the diagram that I showed you earlier? In EDWSB, the subset of a WSB. As such, an EDWSB automatically qualifies as a WSB. Therefore, the contracting officer may receive an offer from an EDWSB or WSB set aside. Slide 23. Question. This is, I know this requires maybe a little bit of mental gymnastics, but I just keep flipping the same question from different angles. If the NAICS code assigned to the solicitation is authorized for WSB, can the contracting officer publicize the procurement as an EDWSB set aside? 2 seconds. The answer is no. I pointed out earlier that the NAICS code authorized for WSB and EDWSB procurement do not overlap. Think of this as establishing a competition pool. If you mistakenly advertise it as an EDWSB set-aside, you would end up eliminating WSBs whose owner or manager does not claim economic disadvantage, but otherwise are qualified to compete for award. So if you do that, you would open yourself to bid protest. Slide 24. FAR 19.1506 provides guidance on making sole source awards under the WSB program. It is very similar to the guidance on HubZone or SDVO sole source awards. Again, a major difference is that you can do WSB or EDWSB sole source awards in designated NAICS codes only. Additionally, the total contract value must not exceed $6.5 million for manufacturing or $4 million for services. Please note that the WSB program is not a business development program. As such, there is no statutory authority to select the awardee and make a direct award as you would do under the 8A program. Agencies are required to support their award decisions with written J&As in accordance with FAR 6.302-5C2. Slide 25. This is essentially the same thing, but I just wanted to repeat the same sort of like flow chart for EDWSB's source award decisions. The only difference is, the NAICS code part. Slide 26. So one of the frequently asked questions is why you need the J&As in order to make source awards under the WSB program. Yes, it is true that FAR was amended to establish a statutory authority for source awards under the WSB program. This authority is incorporated in FAR 6.302-5A7. However, FAR does not exempt from the justifications requirement source awards under the WSB program. So if you go back to this particular FAR clause in a 6.302-5A7, 302-5, it discusses, sole source authority that's provided, that's authorized by statute. But if you keep reading it, and I think it's paragraph, I believe, B, it says, it is stated there, FAR does not exempt from the justifications requirement source awards under the WSP program. FAR only exempts the following four from the justifications requirement. They are purchase made through another agency or from a specified source as authorized or required by a statute. Brand name commercial items purchased for authorized resale. Purchases from Ability One organizations, and 8A source awards of up to $22 million. Specifically, FAR 6.302-5C2 provides contracts awarded using this authority, meaning source of authority under the WSP program shall be supported by the written justifications and approvals, except for the four examples that I have described earlier. Slide 27, please. So now I'm going to go over a few examples to illustrate how you can use the WSP program to meet your acquisition needs. These are real examples that I actually pulled from SBO.gov. So, first question. I'm about to issue a solicitation seeking sign language interpretation services. I am planning to utilize the GSA schedule contract for the solicitation. NAICS Code 54-1930, translation and interpretation services is assigned to the solicitation. Market research shows that there are two or more WSPs that can perform the requirement. Can I set it aside for WSPs? In order to get an answer, again, you need to go to the SBA website and check the NAICS Code table to determine whether the NAICS Code is eligible for use under the WSP program. As you see here, SBA's NAICS Code table says, yes, it is eligible under the WSP program. Yes, it is authorized for WSPs. So the answer to this question is yes. You may set it aside for WSP. Slide 28. Question, I have a solicitation calling for the contractor to provide temporary help services. NAICS Code 56-1320, temporary help services, was assigned to the solicitation. Market research indicates that the rule of two will be met for WSP and SDBO set aside. Can I set it aside for WSP? Again, you need to go to the SBA website and determine whether the NAICS Code is eligible under the WSP program. As you see here, this particular NAICS Code, 56-1320, is not authorized for use under the WSP program. Hence, you may not conduct a procurement under the WSP program. So the answer is no. You may do, however, an SDBO set aside. Slide 29. I have a solicitation calling for the contractor to provide computer network equipment. NAICS Code 54-1519, other computer-related services, is assigned to the solicitation. Market research indicates that the rule of two can be met for WSP and EDWSP set aside. Which one do I select? Notice that the NAICS Code is authorized for WSP. I pointed it out earlier that the NAICS Code authorized for WSP and EDWSP procurements do not overlap. SBA's NAICS Code table indicates that the NAICS Code 54-1519 is authorized for WSP procurements only. Again, I'm repeating myself here, but if you mistakenly advertise it as an EDWSP set-aside, you would end up eliminating WSPs whose owner or manager does not claim economic disadvantage, but are otherwise qualified to compete for award. Again, then you may open yourself to potential bid protest. So in summary, you may set it aside for WSBs in this particular case. Slide 30. I have a requirement to purchase General Dynamics long-range thermal imagers, NAICS code 334511, search, detection, navigation, guidance, aeronautical and nautical system and instrument manufacturing is assigned to the procurement with a total value of $7 million. Market research indicates that there is one WSB that can perform the requirement. I have written J&As. Can I make the award to the WSB on a source basis under the WSB program? The answer is no. Although the NAICS code is authorized for WSBs, as indicated here, remember the total value, the awards are subject to the threshold. The threshold for services contract is, I'm sorry, this is manufacturing contract, sorry. But anyway, so the threshold for manufacturing contract is $6.5 million. And here the total value is $7 million. So the answer is no. You cannot make the contract award on a source basis in this particular case to a women-owned small business. Slide 31. Okay. A WSB or an EDWSB may establish a joint venture with another business to pursue WSB or EDWSB procurement. Each participant to the joint venture must be small under the applicable size standard, unless the joint venture was formed under the SBA or Small Mentor Protege program. The parties to the joint venture must enter into a written joint venture agreement, which must include the following elements. I'm just going to highlight some important aspects of the joint venture agreement. A WSB or an EDWSB must be designated as the managing venture of the joint venture. An employee of the WSB or the EDWSB must be identified as the project manager responsible for contract performance. A WSB or an EDWSB must own 51% and receive profits commensurate with the work it performs. A WSB or an EDWSB must perform at least 40% of the work performed by the joint venture. Additionally, the joint venture agreement must specify the responsibilities of the parties regarding contract negotiation, sources of labor, and contract performance. SBA does not approve a WSB or an EDWSB joint venture agreement, but the joint venture must submit its agreement to the contracting officer when it submits a proposal for a WSB or an EDWSB solicitation. Slide 32. So let us assume that the conditions for a WSB set-aside were met. You advertised it as a WSB set-aside and received and evaluated proposals. You identified the appearance of a role for all. What are the considerations that must be made at the pre-award stage? Slide 33. Number one, contracting officers must check SAM to make sure that the appearance of the role for all made a representation as a WSB eligible under the WSB program. Number two, if the procurement was set aside for WSBs and only one acceptable offer was received from a WSB or an EDWSB, the contracting officer may make the award. Number 3, FAR provides that contracting officers, not SBA, are responsible for checking whether the apparent successful offeror has submitted all the required documents to the WSB repository. Slide 34, please. Question. If the contractor makes a representation as a WSB in SAM, is it eligible for an award under the WSB program, provided all the other conditions are met? The answer is no, not necessarily. There are three types of WSB representations that a small business can make in SAM. First, there are WSBs that meet the regulatory requirements to qualify as a WSB, but do not want to bother with providing eligibility documents to the WSB repository. These WSBs will make a representation in FAR 52219-1C3, but they are not eligible to receive contract awards under the WSB program. If they do happen to receive an award under either set-aside, 8A, small business, hub zone, then agencies may count it towards their WSB contracting goal. Additionally, there are WSBs and ED-WSBs eligible under the WSB program. They make representation as a WSB or an ED-WSB in FAR 52219-1C4 and C5. Notice how the FAR clauses read. It says it is a WSB concern eligible under the WSB program and has provided all the required documents to the WSB repository. In other words, the businesses that make representation in these two paragraphs must provide their eligibility documents to the WSB repository. Slide 35. The WSB program repository is currently housed at certified.sba.gov. SBA Form 2413 or SBA Form 2414 is completed online at certified.sba.gov. SBA no longer requires firms to complete and upload these forms. Just in case, for those of you out there who are very steeped in FAR is outdated. We haven't really made revisions yet, but we're no longer requiring them to complete hard copy of these forms and upload it to the WSB repository. Businesses are required to add supporting documents to specific questions. Contracting officers must request that they be granted access to the certified.sba.gov account of the apparent successful offeror. When contracting officer's request for access is granted, he or she would see a completed WSB or ED-WSB certification questionnaire and associated documents on one page. I will walk you through the process of requesting account access and validating whether the apparent successful offeror has provided all the required documents. If any questions on eligibility arise, you must file a status protest with SBA. Slide 36. Let's revisit the earlier example where the solicitation called for the contractor to provide sign language interpretation services. You have decided to compete among GSA scheduled contract orders. You posted the RFQ on eBuy, received and evaluated 7 quotes, and selected the apparent successful offeror. Question: do I need to verify whether the apparent successful offeror has provided all the required documents to certify.sba.gov? The answer is yes. I am not aware of any GSA scheduled contracts that are set aside for women-owned small businesses. Consequently, if a task order is set aside for WSBs, contracting officers for the ordering agency must verify whether offerors have provided all the required documents to certify www.sba.gov. Slide 37. I have an RFP calling for road construction and maintenance services on 6 national forests in Southern California. I have the RFP set aside for WSBs. After evaluating proposals, I have awarded IDIQ contracts to 12 contractors. Task orders will be competed among these IDIQ contract holders. Question: I understand that I need to verify the apparent successful borrowers have provided all the required documents to certify that SBA.gov, but do I do that for IDIQ contracts, task orders, or both? The answer is you need to perform the verification at the IDIQ contract level. Once that's done, you're done. You're not required to conduct the verification at the task order level because the IDIQ contract is set aside for WSBs. Changing topics to a joint venture. If the apparent successful borrower is a joint venture, then you need to verify the documents of the WSB or EDWSB managing venturer through certify.sba.gov. This is because the joint venture relies upon the status of the managing venturer to qualify for WSB or EDWSB awards. Slide 38. There are 3 ways businesses can qualify as a WSB or an EDWSB. First, they may self-certify and provide their eligibility documents through certify.sba.gov. Second, they have an option to seek WSB or EDWSB certification from one of the 4 SBA-approved third-party certifying entities and provide their third-party certification to certify.sba.gov. Lastly, SBA also accepts the 8A certification into the WSB program if the business is owned and controlled by women and their 8A certification is current. Slide 39. Here's a list of documents that a business self-certifying as a WSB must provide to certify.sba.gov. If you happen to conduct WSB set-aside in the future, my recommendation is I would print out this particular page and then just use it as a cheat sheet so that you can sort of check off the list of documents as you're reviewing their certify.sba.gov documents. Here is a list of documents that self-certifying WSBs must provide to certify. Supporting documents must demonstrate that a business has met the citizenship, ownership, and control requirements. For citizenship, SBA only accepts the following 3 documents: birth certificates, naturalization papers, or unexpired passports. Regarding ownership and control, depending on how a business is organized, it is subject to different paperwork requirements. For example, if a business is organized as a corporation, it must provide the following 5 documents: articles of incorporation, bylaws, all issued stock certificates, stock ledger, and voting agreements, if any. On the other hand, if a business is organized as an LLC, it is required to submit its articles of organization and operating agreement. Additionally, the business must complete the online equivalent of SBA Form 2413 and certify.sba.gov. SBA no longer requires businesses to complete and upload this form to certify.sba.gov. Slide 40. Businesses self-certifying as an EDWSB must provide all the documents required for a WSB and submit financial information on each woman claiming economic disadvantage. They must also complete the online equivalent of SBA Form 2414 and SBA Form 413 in certify.sba.gov. SBA no longer requires businesses to complete and upload these forms. Slide 41. Businesses certified as a WSB or an EDWSB by one of the 4 SBA-approved third-party certifiers must also register with the certify.sba.gov. They must complete the online equivalent of SBA Form 2414 or 2413 and submit its third-party certification through certify.sba.gov. I would like to emphasize that SBA only accepts WSB or EDWSB certification from one of the following 4 third-party certifiers. They are the El Paso Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the National Women Business Owners Corporation, the U.S. Women's Chamber of Commerce, and the Women's Business Enterprise National Council. SBA does not accept state certifications or DBE certifications from the U.S. Department of Transportation. Slide 42. Active participants in the 8A Business Development Program may rely on their 8A certification to demonstrate their qualified status as a WSB and an EDWSB. They are still required to complete the online equivalent of SBA Form 2414 in certify.sba.gov and provide their initial 8A certification letter, as well as most recent annual review letter issued by SBA. Slide 43. SBA is committed to ensuring only eligible WSBs benefit from the program. So we have a couple of different tools in our toolbox to ensure that there is no fraud, waste, and abuse. But something that you might want to be mindful of is SBA will process any status protest against the, filed against the Apparent Success Rule 4 in connection with WSB, set aside, or source award. Only interested party, meaning SBA Contracting Officer, and unsuccessful forward in a set-aside situation may submit a protest. Slide 44, please. I'm going to quickly go walk you through the certify.sba.gov. Next slide, please, 46. So you just saw the homepage of certify.sba.gov, and make sure that you use the link for federal government employees to register. In order to review the documents that Apparent Success Rule 4 has provided, you must request access, and the contractor must approve your request. Before you make the request, you must register with certify.sba.gov through max.gov using your CAC or PIV card. Please use the link for federal government employees to register or log in. Slide 47. Once you have logged in, you click the request menu on top and then click on Request Access link on the left navigation bar. 48. Enter the DUNS number of the offeror in the text box and click on the search button. If the contractor has not provided any documents or all of the required information to certify.sba.gov, you receive a message that the vendor has not completed its registration. Slide 49. Complete the request form by entering the solicitation number and the NAICS code. Then select the type of WSB procurement. Check the I accept the box and then click on the Request Access button. You did not need to send a separate notification to the contractor because the system will do that for you. Slide 50. When the offeror approves your request, you will receive a notification from certified.sba.gov by email. Log in using your government ID and click on the My Request link on the left navigation bar. In the View column, select which certification you would like to see using the WSB or EDWSB links. Next slide, please. 51. Please note that for WSB set-aside procurement, the offeror can satisfy the requirement for WSB even if it only completes the EDWSB certification questionnaire. You may recall that an EDWSB automatically qualifies as a WSB. If you do not see anything in the View column, the offeror has not provided any documents or has not completed the online certification questionnaire. In this case, you actually have an option. If you have a little bit of lead time, you can contact the contractor and remind them of its responsibility for providing the documents to certified.sba.gov. And you also, you may file a status protest with SBA against the apparent successful offer. Slide 52. Unlike the WSB repository in the general login system, you would not need to toggle among documents. Certified.sba.gov requires businesses to complete the certification questionnaire and associate the documents with the specific questions. In other words, you can review the answer and supporting documents all on one web page. To view the supporting documents, click on the file name link as highlighted in red. Slide 53. I'd like to encourage you to visit the WSB program website as we update the website on a regular basis. Any program-related questions should be sent to WSB@sba.gov. For technical questions, please send an email to help@certify.sba.gov. That's it for now. Chris, I will hand it back to you.
All right, Amy, thank you so much for your presentation. We are going to open it up to some questions now. So, Val, whenever you are ready, go with your first one.
Okay, well, we did get a couple of questions that asked for the slides. If you do not have the slides and would like them, please send an email to sbalearning@sba.gov, and we will send the slides to you. Amy, what is the advantage, if any, to be third-party certified?
There is none. Self-certification is in parity with a third-party certification. So for purposes of the Women-owned Small Business Program, meaning that pursuing set-aside contract or source awards under the WSB program, those two options are completely in parity. So third-party certification is only an option. It's not a requirement.
Okay. Next question. Why are WOSBs restricted to only 80 NAICS? For example, it appears construction NAICS aren't included. However, it would enhance participation if construction NAICS were allowed. Is there a move to include additional NAICS in WOSB?
Maybe I didn't really communicate it very clearly, but there are 364 NAICS codes that are authorized for WSB set-aside and source awards, and there are 80 NAICS codes are authorized for EDWSB procurement. So in total, we have 444 NAICS codes that are authorized under the program. So those construction NAICS codes, they are all eligible for use for WSB set-aside or source award contracts under the program.
Okay. Does their SAM profile indicate somewhere on it that they are qualified under these certain NAICS codes?
That's a good question. Bear in mind that if you read the eligibility requirements, there is nothing in the regulation that says they must operate in eligible NAICS code to qualify as a WSB. So NAICS codes do not really have a direct bearing on their eligibility. However, if your primary or secondary NAICS codes, none of them are authorized for use under the WSB program, it probably doesn't really make sense for them to try to qualify as such, because they're not going to see any set-aside or source contract awards out of this program. So the answer to that is, from the contracting officer's perspective, it doesn't really matter whether their SAM profile says whether they're, this particular, the NAICS code they operated in are authorized under the program. But however, it will sort of come into play when you read their proposals, because chances are, if they have not really operated in these industries, their proposals are not going to make it through the evaluation process because they have no past performance to show for it.
Can an EDWSB submit a proposal even if the solicitation is a WOSB set-aside?
Yes. So, if you get confused, think about the diagram that I showed you earlier. So, if it is a WSB set-aside, your competition pool is this big. It includes all the WSBs, and EDWSB only is a subset of that. So if you're an EDWSB, you automatically qualify as a WSB. So the answer is yes.
Okay, on slide 17, it states the contract value must be over $150,000 for a set-aside or sole source, but when you get to sole source, the contract value can't be greater than the $6.5 million for manufacturing and the $4 million for services. Is construction considered under the services?
Construction, yes. The NAICS code, it starts with the 27. Yeah, so it should be considered under services, yes.
If a company isn't required to have a DBA certificate from their state, is there anything a sole proprietor could upload in place of it to the repository?
That's a really good question. If they're not required to have a DBA name, and they have it. So, although the regulation, this is something that we probably have to address when we work on the proposed rule for the WSB program to implement the certification requirement. This is something that we have to keep in mind. So although the current regulation says DBA certificate is required for sole prop, if they don't have it, they don't have it. I mean, they can't really, make something up.
Okay, I think you've answered this, but I do want to address all the questions that we received. Mm-hmm. So the next two, how does the contracting officer verify the certification if WOSBs can self-certify in SAM? Are we checking for self-certification in, hold on a second. Are we checking for self-certification in SAM.gov under 52212-3, Section 5, Women-owned Small Business mm-hmm. Concerns? Mm-hmm. The offeror represents that it is a woman-owned small business concern, but mm-hmm. did not check that it is not a WOSB concern eligible under the program.
So when you, when you receive a proposal, you have to rely on their SAM profile as accurate, complete, and current. But before you make an award, you have to address a couple of different issues. If their SAM profile has a defect, meaning that they haven't really checked, it's a WSB set-aside, but they haven't checked the appropriate box in SAM, you have to probably notify them. They either address it or they update their SAM profile or not. And the second issue is the verification requirement. It doesn't really come into play until you're actually ready to make the award. it's not really checking whether they are self-certified or third-party certified. It's more of, you go to certified.sba.gov and make sure that they are in compliance with the FAR requirement, meaning they provided all the required documents. So that's the step that you need to take. But as I stated before, depending upon whether they're self-certified or third-party certified, the documentation requirement is different. But when you evaluate the proposal, you have to get the information, you have to realize their information as accurate and complete and current.
Okay, we have one last question. On slide 26, what does it mean when it says FAR exempts the following from justification requirement?
So I touched upon it briefly, but if you go back to read FAR 6.3025-5, it actually the whole section discusses a source authority authorized or required by statute. So, all these authorities for Hudson, Women-owned, SDBO, source awards, they all described in here. But if that is mentioned in paragraph B, but if you continue to read to paragraph C, it actually says contract awarded using this authority shall be supported by the justifications and approvals. And it continues to say that with the exception of these, four situations that I described. It only references the FAR clauses number, but if you refer back to it, FAR says only these type of 4 awards are exempt from the justification requirement. Everything else, you have to justify your award decisions with a written JN.
Okay, Chris, I do not have any more questions that have been sent in.
Okay, great. Then I just want to thank Amy for providing a great presentation for us today. Val and Carla, appreciate your assistance. And thank you to the participants for listening in and having some great questions for us. We hope that you enjoy the content here and you're able to log in next month. And one last thing, if you do have some additional questions or want some additional information, please, regarding this program, please send an email to sbalearning@sba.gov, and we'll be able to assist you. Once again, thank you, and we look forward to talking with you next month.
Thank you all for joining today's conference. This session has now concluded, and you may disconnect.